Canada's a great country, but it isn't without its flaws. Today we're going to talk about 6 different issues that affect Canadians, mainly Torontonians, on municipal, provincial, and federal levels.
Out of the countless politically relevant issues in Toronto, I've chosen to focus on 2 fairly recent polarizing issues. To begin, let's take a look at the push for privatized garbage collection in Scarborough. When John Tory was elected 4 years ago, he promised to privatize garbage collection areas east of Yonge, which includes Scarborough. The issue arises when trying to find the most cost-effective way to pick up garbage. Mayor John Tory and his council allies pushed for privatizing garbage collection east of Yonge, while a variety of other councillors such as Jim Coordinating, who represents Scarborough Agincourt, Paula Fletcher, Emily Alfred, who is a waste campaigner with the Toronto Environmental Alliance, and many others warn about the drawbacks of privatizing garbage collection. The drawbacks they warn against can fall into 2 clusters. First, a city collection in Scarborough is cheaper than privatized collection. Councillor Paula Fletcher compares Scarborough's city collection to Etobicoke's private collection and found that Scarborough's city collection costs $126.89, while Etobicoke's private collection costs $142.86. Moreover, other councillors like Jim Coordinating argued that the blended system of 50% city and 50% private collection works best, saying, "Why are we even thinking of going down the route to privatization and throwing CUPE Local 416 workers under the bus?" In addition, unions have formed against the privatization, saying that the move is just a push to fire workers. On the other hand, John Tory wants to privatize garbage collection areas east of Yonge because it worked very well with areas west of Yonge. He also pointed out that privatized garbage collection is a norm in most GTA cities and that privatization is the method for garbage collection at the lowest cost. The next polarizing issue is the TTC struggling to make sure that all of the Presto fare gates recently installed all work properly. The issue is that the software platform currently in place is inadequately equipped to deal with the increased number of Presto fare gates. As the TTC rolls out more gates, the system becomes overloaded and becomes unable to detect when a gate fails. The stakeholders in this issue are clear. The TTC wants the system to work perfectly for the 1.8 million users they want to shift to Presto, but the people who use it every day are forced to search for a working gate or take the broken one without paying. However, the TTC does understand that there is a problem. TTC spokesperson Heather Brown commented that it's very difficult to fix out-of-service gates, making many remain out of commission longer than they should be. She also said that the TTC is working closely with Metrolinx, the transit agency responsible for Presto cards, and that the system will be fully ready in time for the shift. The overload is caused by the fare gates currently using the back-end software platform for Presto card reload and vending machines, when the fare gates should be using a completely separate software platform. Consequently, councillors such as John Campbell, who sits on the TTC board, has asked for an explanation as to why this back-end software was not set up prior to installing the new fare gates, which have costed the TTC $50 million in installation alone. In addition, he cast doubt on the TTC's timeline for switching to Presto, saying that the TTC is bleeding millions in fare evasion, and said that before making the shift to Presto, the TTC wants to be sure that the fare gates work correctly. Furthermore, the TTC plans to stop selling older forms of fare media, such as tokens, tickets, and passes, sometime in the middle of the year, and will ask subway riders to switch to Presto. This abrupt switch may prompt pushback from subway riders who do not want or have the resources to make the switch to Presto.
On the provincial level of government, Ontario is more developed and populated than other provinces. Nonetheless, Ontario continues to face many issues that affect our daily lives. Of these issues, rising energy costs and minimum wage are some of our most significant concerns. When examined with other provinces, Ontario has much higher energy costs. According to the Ontario Energy Board, between 2006 and 2016, prices for off-peak power have risen by 149%. Mid-peak power rose up 76%, and on-peak power rose by 71%. This presents a significant issue as many struggle to afford necessities, let alone unrealistic energy prices. It is logical to think that the cause of the increase in cost is a low supply of energy, but this is not the case. In fact, it is the opposite. Ontario is able to produce 30,203 megawatts of power daily, which almost doubles our 15,959 megawatt daily consumption. With so much excess power, high prices should not be a concern. However, in the early 2000s, the Liberals Liberals took over Ontario. Promising the discontinued use of the province's coal power plants, they began to upgrade and build solar, wind, and natural gas plants. Taking note of Ontario Hydro's 1980 over-budget of debt and failed nuclear energy project, the province chose to privatize energy production to avoid overrun. These new companies would have the responsibility to pay for fees of running and fixing the facilities on their own, in exchange for a 20-year contract that provides them with a set amount of revenue, no matter how much the power plants would produce. As time progressed, more power plants were commissioned, and soon Ontario found itself with more power plants than it needed. With the 20-year agreement still in power until this day, Ontario had to pay for the excess privatized energy production in the form of the increase of electric bills, whether they needed the energy or not. With the shift from a majority of manufacturing jobs to tertiary jobs and governmental influences to save power, energy demands plummeted, further increasing the cost of electricity. A quite popular issue that has sparked a bit of controversy since its passing is the minimum wage hike from $11.60 to $14 on January 1st of this year. This bill, dubbed the Fair Workplaces, Better Jobs Act, is the centerpiece of Kathleen Wayne's re-election effort, showing voters that her government is making life fairer for those struggling to get by. However, the people who oppose this bill, composed of business groups and progressive conservatives, warn that this bill will kill jobs and drive up the cost of goods and services. The bill centers around hiking the minimum wage to $14 on January 1st of this year, and then $15 on January 1st the next year, giving a minimum of 10 days of personal emergency leave and 2 paid days to those covered by the Employment Standards Act. This requires employers to pay part-time, temporary, and casual workers at the same rate as full-time workers. This forces employers to pay 3 hours of wages for canceling a worker's scheduled shift less than 48 hours in advance, and making it easier for unions to organize in such sectors as temporary help agencies and building maintenance. Those who support this, such as Labor Minister Kevin Flynn, believe that this increase will help those struggling to get by, saying, "We on this side of the house think it's time for those people to have an increase in their pay. They're trying to raise family. They're trying to buy groceries. They're trying to buy shoes for their kids. They're trying to pay rent." On the other hand, the opposition progressive conservatives say the hike to $15 is happening too fast. If elected next June, the PCs would slow down the phase-in, raising the minimum wage annually by 25 cents an hour so that it only reaches $15 in 2022.
Finally, let's look at some of the issues that affect Canada on a federal level. The first federal issue is Canada's neglect of Canadian Aboriginal people. There are a wide variety of issues that affect Aboriginals, including poor mental and physical health, inadequate housing, lack of education, low income, and high levels of incarceration. I will focus particularly on their limited access to education, since this is the root to a lot of these other problems. Now, if you've been paying attention in grade 6 history class, you would know that alongside the Christian Church, the Canadian government attempted to eradicate Aboriginal traditions through residential schools. The schools have disrupted the lives of many Aboriginals. While the last residential school closed in 1996, the traumatic effects have soaked through multiple generations, still affecting Aboriginals today. According to a census in 2011, 58% of young adults living on Aboriginal reserves have not completed high school. A 2016 census reported the rates of high school or post-secondary qualifications in Aboriginal people. 70% of the First Nations, 82% of the Métis, and 56% of the Inuit made the qualification. It's better than before, but there's still a large education gap between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. Their subpar education leads many of these individuals to take up low-income jobs. There are a variety of factors affecting their education, including lack of funding from government departments such as the Department of Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada, or INAC, which Trudeau announced will be phased out in favor of 2 new departments for each of the cabinet ministers responsible for INAC. These factors are particularly amplified in the Inuit due to their northern location, leading to low number of teachers and crowded areas, which lead to stress and academic unproductivity. The other issue that is being dealt with on a federal level is carbon pricing. Carbon pricing itself is a good foolproof way to discourage companies and individuals from producing a lot of carbon emissions. This itself is obviously not the problem, but the execution of carbon pricing may be an issue. Many people are concerned that the additional prices on goods and services will skyrocket, lowering quality of life. These prices directly and indirectly affect the price of goods. First, price of fuel such as gasoline, natural gas, and coal are directly raised with the implementation of carbon pricing. Next, products that require other inputs that use carbon such as shipping and heating will also be slightly more expensive. As you know, almost every product requires some form of transportation to get to our households, so basically a majority of these products that we use will be indirectly affected. It's estimated that for the average household in Alberta and Ontario, the direct costs will stack up to $150 to $200, and indirect costs will stack up to $80 to $100. It is much easier to apply the direct pricing to fossil fuels since they have a fixed amount of carbon inside them. A liter of gasoline produces 2.2 kilograms of CO2. From this, it is predicted that homes that use natural gas heating will be billed an additional $100 annually. In British Columbia, there is a tax of $30 per ton of greenhouse gas. In Quebec, they use a cap-and-trade system with their own pricings. This roughly translates to $18 per ton. Prices for other goods become a bit more complicated. Since our economy is so interconnected, methods for applying prices aren't as clear-cut. There are many different factors involved, and some of these factors have greater influence on pricing. Large factors such as wholesale and retail trades are probably the most influential. Previously, I mentioned how the use of shipping products will emit fossil fuels. About 4% of the money we spend on food goes to transportation, meaning that if transportation costs raise by 1%, then food costs will raise by 0.04%. This is only one example of how prices can be raised.